Hello, everyone. This is George Yates. I'm here on another edition of Justice for All, and we're on WHKT AM 1650, and we'll be with you for about an hour today. And we have a really interesting guest today. His name is Joel Joseph. He's a lawyer, a constitutional lawyer, has argued many cases in front of the United States Supreme Court. He'll be with us today by phone, and he is the author of a very excellent book on the United States Supreme Court called Black Mondays, and it's the worst decisions of the United States Supreme Court. And Mr. Joseph is here with us on the line today. Are you there, Joel?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, well, really, it's great to. It's an honor to have you here on the show today. First of all, I'd like our listeners to hear a little bit about you. What I'm impressed about is how many cases that you have actually argued yourself in front of the United States Supreme Court.
Well, it's not the number of cases; it's the importance of the cases, and sometimes cases that you ask the Supreme Court to hear and they won't hear, I think, are more important than the ones they hear. For example, I brought the case challenging the constitutionality of the North American Free Trade Agreement. We asked the Supreme Court to review it, and they wouldn't. I consider that a bad decision of the Supreme Court. Of course, it's not in the book because they didn't write anything about it. But
well, actually, you did mention that was you felt that NAFTA, or your position was that NAFTA was a treaty and therefore had to be approved by Congress, right? Because that's in the Constitution, correct?
No, approved by 2/3 in the Senate. That's
okay.
What the treaty clause provides, and it didn't get 2/3 in the Senate. And so it was passed by both houses of Congress as ordinary legislation, and it went through the 11th Circuit, which is down in Atlanta, and they ruled it was a political question, which of course it is not. It's a legal question. It's a constitutional question whether this was passed properly, and NAFTA certainly is a treaty, as all of us understand what a treaty is. It's an agreement with the United States by at least one other foreign country. And if NAFTA is not a treaty, I'm not sure what it is.
Well, there's another case that you talk about, the ILA case, where the unions boycotted Russian goods during the 1979 invasion of Afghanistan. And the Supreme Court that's one of your worst cases. Is that somewhat similar there, where they say that in that case your opinion was that the labor laws were unconstitutional?
That's right. I thought that everybody, I think, has the right to boycott the goods from any nation. I think we should boycott Russian goods right now because of what they're doing in the Ukraine and Crimea. And I think citizens have the First Amendment right to do that, and that I do think the labor laws, to the extent that they were applied to say that a union could not have a boycott of foreign goods, is unconstitutional.
Well, now, is that still good law? Would the union be able to boycott Russian goods now and be able to do it legally? Because in that case, I think they later were ordered to pay millions of dollars to the shipping company because they'd boycotted. Is that still good law?
I think it is. It's still the law of the land unless the Supreme Court changes course. And as you know, the Supreme Court has overturned itself many times, and this is one area where I hope they do.
Well, that's one of the most interesting things, it seems to me, when I read your book, was that sometimes justices will make these horrendous decisions and come in and correct themselves. 3 years later, they'll reverse themselves, and then they'll make another bad decision, and that remains law for 50 years or more. Give our listeners some examples of where they've reversed themselves, and then maybe contrast that with some other bad decisions that have remained, in your opinion, bad law for many more years.
Okay. One of the cases where they've reversed themselves fairly recently are concerning the sodomy laws, and most people consider these gay rights cases. Back in the 80s, the Supreme Court ruled that anti-sodomy laws in Georgia were constitutional, that the state had the right to make consensual sex illegal. And that was a 5-4 decision. One of the interesting things about that case was Justice Powell, after he left the Supreme Court, said he made a mistake in that case. And he had said at that time that he had never met a gay person. And the interesting thing was he was talking to his law clerk who was gay. He just didn't know it. The Supreme Court has really reversed itself concerning gay rights considerably. Now they're sort of leading the country on the right to have gay marriages.
What group would you say the Supreme Court, in your opinion, has discriminated against the most?
Well, the most shocking thing to me is I believe it's veterans, and that's one group. That's the group who defends the Constitution of the United States, and the Supreme Court has consistently ruled against them. And I have two cases concerning veterans in the book. One where the Supreme Court said that Congress passed a law that veterans could not spend more than $10 to hire a lawyer concerning a case against the Veterans Administration. And the Supreme Court said that was constitutional. So the veterans had no right, no lawyer's going to take a case for $10. The law was passed 100 years ago. At the same time, the Supreme Court has ruled that those on welfare had the right. Of course, criminal defendants have the right at government expense to have defense, but veterans have no right to an attorney. And the most egregious case against veterans is the LSD case, where in my former home state of Maryland, a officer in the Army was given LSD without his knowledge or consent and learned about it years later, and the Supreme Court ruled he had no right to sue.
We've got to go to a short commercial break here, Joel. This is George Yates here with Justice for All. We're talking with Joel Joseph, the author of Black Mondays. We'll be right back and talk with Mr. Joseph about the discrimination of veterans by the United States Supreme Court and some other topics. Stay right there.
Stay tuned for the next segment of Justice for All with George Yates.
Join us every Sunday at noon as the dogs take over the airways on K-Talk 1650 AM. National Canine Academy Radio, the area's only weekly hour-long show that is all about the dogs, with experts from all over the world offering advice on everything from selecting the right dog for you, training, veterinary care, dog food, and even working with your dog. National Canine Academy Radio, only on K-Talk 1650 AM.
Have you been injured in a car accident or other circumstance? Are you in pain, facing a mountain of hospital bills? Is an insurance company trying to get you to settle without an attorney? Call the law firm of George Yates, an experienced personal injury lawyer that can give you the advice you need to make the best decisions. Pick up the phone right now and call 757-491-8800. That's 757-491-8800. Call 757-491-8800 now for a free consultation. Spring is back, and so are the Norfolk Tides. Catch the fun and excitement as your Norfolk Tides take the field at beautiful Harbor Park. Bring your friends and family to root on the Orioles of tomorrow, today. Log on to NorfolkTides.com for more information on season tickets, groups, ticket discounts, and Tides merchandise. And don't forget to follow the Tides on Twitter and Facebook for up-to-date promotions and team information. Tides Baseball, minor leagues, major fun.
We doubt ourselves, we doubt our beliefs, we doubt our institutions, and we doubt the law. But today you are the law. You are the law. Not some book, not the lawyers, not a marble statue, or the trappings of the court. You are the law.
Hi, we're back. It's Justice for All, George Yates, and our guest today is Joel Joseph. I was kind of shocked when you said that. I read your book, and I saw the cases on veterans. So the LSD case did shock me. What was the legal standard that the court followed in that case, finding that a veteran that found out that he'd been experimented on? I mean, that's like something from Nazi Germany, sounds like to me.
I mean, yes, it is. And I think it was Justice Sandra Day O'Connor who dissented in that case, saying it was like, World War II Germany, something they would do, experimenting on soldiers. And basically, they've ruled that, once you're in the Army, you have no right to sue. I mean, to me, it's crazy. He didn't sign a waiver or anything, or agree to participate in an experiment. It was James Stanley, and it really ruined his life. He didn't realize he was given LSD until 15 years later, when he got a letter from the Defense Department saying they're doing a follow-up on those people who were given LSD in the 50s. And to me, it's just outrageous. And I try not to have a liberal or conservative perspective, just a fairness. And I think this is fundamentally unfair. And so, I quote liberal justices and conservative justices. And I think the justices like Sandra Day O'Connor, who had a real good sense of justice, said this is just un-American. I
have another case that I'm wondering how judges feel about you when you appear in front of them. You make a comment in your book. I believe the case is the Stump matter, where a woman came in and had her daughter sterilized without her consent, her minor daughter, and she tried to sue the judge later, and the Supreme Court ruled that judges have immunity from that sort of thing. Is that still good law, that Stump case that you talk about in your book?
Yeah, it's still good law, and I think that is just an outrageous decision. The judge didn't have jurisdiction. They didn't even open a docket in the case. It was difficult to find it, and didn't give the girl. It was a young girl, and the mother thought she was problematic, got into trouble a lot, and told her she was having some other kind of surgery, appendectomy or something. I'm not sure what it was, but they permanently sterilized her, and she didn't realize it until she tried to have children years later.
The rule is that no matter what a judge does in our country, no matter how illegal it may be, he or she is totally immune, and the only way a citizen can appeal is to appeal to a higher court. That's it. That's the only remedy.
That's it. And in that case, the judge didn't even have jurisdiction over the matter. So a court can have any ruling it wants. Judge can do anything he or she wants, and is 100% immune. And I think that's just not right. And not only that, because of that, the hospital was immune and the doctor was immune as well because they were relying on the court order.
And that's not in the Constitution, is it? I mean, the Constitution of the United States does not give a lot of these. These are judge-made decisions, and you talk about that in your book. Give our listeners some examples of doctrines in the United States culture now, which we are considered to be constitutional, rights or doctrines that were not in the Constitution. That's one of them, right? Judges are immune.
Judges are immune. Well, prosecutors are immune as well.
Is that in the Constitution?
No. All those are judge-made law, and the same with the Stanley case, the LSD case. That was judge-made law as well. In fact, most of the decisions in the book are not based on the Constitution. They're based on judge-made law. And, of course, it's judge-made interpretation many times of the Constitution. But the Constitution doesn't talk about immunity for judges. It's not mentioned.
You're listening to WHKT AM 1650. This is George Yates, your host for our show is Justice for All. We're talking with Joel Joseph, who's the author of Black Mondays, the Worst Decisions of the United States Supreme Court. Moving into the current court, what is my reading of your book indicates to me that your opinion is that the current Roberts Court is really very slanted towards the rights of corporations and private property and against that of individuals. Is that a fair assessment of your view of this court?
That's fair, and I really think this court has really moved the direction of the court more than many others. And
yet,
exactly in the direction you said, the Citizens United case, where it basically said that corporations are people and have First Amendment rights. Of course, corporations have First Amendment rights to a certain extent, but they don't have the right to vote. And if you don't have the right to vote, I think you can limit their impact on elections.
The most recent cases that you're discussing in your book is the Clapper versus Amnesty International. Now, that is a case involving some of these the spy NSA spying. What is that case about, and how does that relate to what's going on in our country right now?
Well, that case was decided basically that you didn't have the right to sue over violations of your privacy because you don't have what they say standing. In other words, you can't prove that you were injured by it because you don't have the data, because the government has all the data. And I think the court's going to have different cases that come up now that Mr. Snowden has released what is really going on with the NSA, and that Verizon and so forth has been turning over their records to the federal government. So the ACLU has new cases pending after the Clapper decision. Hopefully the Supreme Court will, take those head on. But in the Clapper case, they said the parties could not prove they were being injured by the NSA's spying activities, so they had no right to sue.
How are you ever to prove that you're being injured if you don't know whether they're spying on you or not?
Well, that's why the Snowden revelations are so interesting, and now it's more possible now to prove that you were spied on.
Because of some of these revelations.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Joseph, I'm sure you have some critics of your book that obviously lots of people will agree with some of these Supreme Court decisions. What are some arguments in favor of some of these decisions, or are there any, in your opinion?
Well, of course, there's usually two or more sides to any case. The most things, the decisions that I get the most criticism on is my opposition to the gun control cases, the Heller versus District of Columbia, because I don't think the Second Amendment gives individuals the right to bear arms. That the intent of the Second Amendment was to give the state militias the right to bear arms, in my opinion, and the opinion of the Supreme Court for 200 years. And I think, I've gotten most criticism for those decisions, those opinions that I wrote. But I believe that we can have gun rights in this country, and that it is more of a states' right issue. I was talking about it with some other attorneys earlier, that the need for a citizen to have a gun in Alaska is far different than the need for someone to have a gun in Washington, D.C. or Chicago. And I think the Supreme Court has really tilted the balance in favor of arming everybody in this country, which I think is way too dangerous.
Do you have a favorite justice when you have appeared in front of the Supreme Court?
Well, I mean, Justice Marshall wrote the foreword to the book, and although we don't agree on everything, and of course he's not alive anymore, do I have a favorite justice right now? I'm afraid to say I don't. I'm not happy with most of the justices on the Supreme Court.
Now, Justice Marshall wrote the foreword to your book, and he mentions that the Constitution itself, the government that was formed by the Constitution was, and he uses the word defective from the beginning of our country. What does he mean by defective, and do you agree with that assessment?
Well, no, I don't agree with that assessment. I've talked to him about it, and he was very upset, and I can understand this, that slavery was approved of in the original Constitution, but the Constitution did have amendment provisions, and it did take a civil war, unfortunately, to correct that problem with the Constitution. But I think the Constitution is one of the best documents ever written in the world, and many countries use our Constitution as a template for writing their own. And so I think the Constitution is, pretty sound, 95% sound, and not defective from the start, as Justice Marshall contended. Certainly I respect his opinion on that. My problem is more with the judges who are interpreting the Constitution of the United States, and I think most of the decisions in the book are not based on flaws with the Constitution, they're based on flaws with the judiciary.
In all of your review of these cases, what is the worst case, or if you can't nail it down to one, how about two, the worst cases ever decided by the Supreme Court?
Well, I can break it down a little bit. I think one of the worst cases in the past 20, 30 years is Bush versus Gore. Now, I think the Supreme Court never should have taken that case, and I feel that the Supreme Court stepped in where it really didn't belong. It really should have allowed Florida to allow the count of the votes to play out. And, it was a 5-4 decision, and I think most of the justices were upset by it. And Justice O'Connor, who was in the majority in that case, when she left the court, she felt that it was a mistake. I've communicated with her, and I think she feels very badly about that decision, that they never should have taken it. It didn't meet the standards for the Supreme Court stepping in, especially when they I'm sure you remember, they halted the counting of the ballots.
Right.
They granted an injunction. There certainly was under the standards for granting an injunction, there was no irreparable harm to the votes being counted. I mean, I can't imagine what the harm is when you're actually counting ballots, trying to get each vote to count equally.
Well, I'm sure there are a lot of people who agree with you at the time, and I think as the next few years went on, a lot of people were regretting that decision as well. We are here on WHKT AM 1650. My name is George Yates. I'm the host of your show here today, Justice for All. Our guest is Joel Joseph, the author of Black Mondays. We're going to go to a short break here, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk to Mr. Joseph about the Citizens United case and some more recent cases, as well as what he believes are going to be some interesting cases in the future to be decided by the United States Supreme Court. Stay right with us.
Stay tuned for the next segment of Justice for All with George Yates.
Join us every Sunday at noon as the dogs take over the airways on K-Talk 1650 AM. National Canine Academy Radio, the area's only weekly hour-long show that is all about the dogs, with experts from all over the world offering advice on everything from selecting the right dog for you, training, veterinary care, dog food, and even working with your dog. National Canine Academy Radio, only on K-Talk 1650 AM.
Have you or a loved one been accused of a crime? If so, the law firm of George Yates knows how to navigate the legal system and offer you the best possible defense. George is a former prosecutor and has valuable experience from both sides of the courtroom. Pick up the phone right now and call 757-491-8800. That's 757-491-8800. Great legal advice does not have to be expensive. Call 757-491-8800 now for a free consultation.
Mark your calendar for May 29th to June 1st as Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church in Newport News presents the Newport News Greek Festival. Enjoy authentic Greek food, desserts, beverages, Greek dancing, entertainment, arts and crafts, vendors, and much more. The Newport News Greek Festival is located on 60 Traverse Road, off exit 258B on Route 17 in Newport News. For more information, log on to newportnewsgreekfestival.org. See you at the Newport News Greek Festival May 29th to June 1st.
Opa! Fink's Car Care, with locations in Chesapeake and Portsmouth, is your dedicated Tire Stars dealer. At Fink's, their experienced staff specializes in brakes, steering, suspension, tune-ups, oil changes, and much more. They also handle rebuilt engines and transmissions, and they're your destination for tires, rims, and towing as well. Fink's is located at 2236 South Military Highway at 2711 Victory Boulevard. For more information, log on to finkscarcare.com or call 545-3573.
The place the locals and tourists go for U.S. rare coins and currency is Newcastle Coins and Collectibles in Chesapeake. They specialize in U.S. silver and gold coins, provide free verbal offers, and are always buying U.S. rare coins. Visit them at 681 North Battlefield Boulevard in Chesapeake, across from Chesapeake General, Tuesday through Saturday, and online at newcastlecollectibles.com. Call 609-3633. That's 609-3633. For Newcastle Coins and Collectibles.
You are out of order! You're out of order! You're out of order! The whole trial is out of order! They're out of order!
We're back on Justice for All. I'm your host, George Yates, and we're at 1650 AM. I'm here with Joel Joseph, who's the author of Black Mondays. First of all, Mr. Joseph, why do you call your book Black Mondays for our listeners' review?
Well, most decisions of the Supreme Court are handed down on Mondays. Not everyone, but 95% of them are handed down on Mondays. So that's how the title came in. And it's another thing where Justice Marshall wasn't happy with the title, but we went with it anyway.
I mean, think back. Black Friday is when the stock market crashed, and of course now it's a big shopping day. So now it's Black Mondays.
Right. Exactly.
Now, the first edition of this book came out in 1987, so you have numerous editions of it. I think the most recent one came out on December the 1st, 2013. That's the one that I'm reading?
That's right. That's the fourth edition of the book.
And now, where is that book available? Is that in hardcover? Is it in paperback? I know I got mine on my Kindle and just ordered it on Amazon. But if someone's
available
interested?
in hardcover and paperback, you can go to any bookstore. You can go to Amazon.com, and you can go to the iTunes store as well. You didn't go to iTunes; you went to Kindle, but it's available in many formats.
Okay, great. Well, listen. Now, where do you live?
In Los Angeles.
All right. Now, you're a constitutional lawyer, and are you a member of the bar there in California?
No, I'm not. I've been practicing for about 40 years. So I'm sort of winding down legal practice, and I've been working for the Made in the USA Foundation to promote American-made products. So that's been my position, my advocacy for the past couple of years.
Now, are you a member of the ACLU, or have you assisted? It seems like I see lots of references to the ACLU in your book. Have you involved yourself with that organization over the years?
No, I haven't. I'm not a member of the ACLU. I like what they're doing sometimes, not all the time. And I try to stay independent. So I'm not a member of any organization except my own, which is as I said, the Made in the USA Foundation, promoting American products and values.
Now, the most recent case, the Citizens United case, which I guess declared McCain-Feingold law unconstitutional. What other observations do you have about that case? Because that's had a lot of impact on our elections and will continue to have an impact on elections going forward. What's your view on that case?
Well, I think it's wrongly decided, and part of it is, and this is where it gets interesting, it's where conservative judges become activists. And for many, many years, the conservatives were complaining that the court was a liberal activist court. Now we have a conservative activist court, and I think they're both wrong.
I remember when Roberts was going through his confirmation hearings, he was being questioned, and whenever he was being cross-examined by a lot of Democrats and so on, he would say things like, "I'm restrained, and I'm not going to upset, settled precedent, and I really believe in stare decisis," and so on. But he's been anything but a judge to follow precedent.
I agree with you. What happened in that case is Citizens United produced a movie called Hillary. It was about Hillary Clinton, and they wanted to use unlimited funds to promote it. And as far as I'm concerned, the court should have limited their decision to saying that a corporation could promote a movie even if it involved candidates for office. So they went way beyond that and said that all corporations could spend any amount of money on campaigns, independent expenditures on campaigns. And give you a little background, the only federal agency that I ever worked for was the Federal Election Commission. I helped set it up back in the 70s. And I think right now our elections are out of control. Spending is out of control. I heard Senator Warren from Massachusetts speak recently that she had to raise over $40 million to run for the Senate in Massachusetts. And I think that's, right now we're going to have an elite club in the Senate that is made up of only millionaires or people who are supported by billionaires. And I think we have to take super amounts of money out of politics, and I don't think corporations or labor unions should play any role in our campaigns.
There was a recent case, that McCutcheon case as well. Now, that's not in your book. Do you consider that to be one of the worst decisions? It's kind of in the same line with Citizens United, wouldn't it? In a very similar case.
Well, I don't consider. First of all, that came out after the book came out, but I don't consider that as bad as the Citizens United case, because that involved the right of individuals to contribute to campaigns, and it kept the limits per campaign intact. It just limited the total expenditure that an individual can make. And I tend to agree with the court that if you want to support a candidate or 50 candidates across the country in different races, as an individual, you should be allowed to do that. So I don't think it is one of the worst decisions, and I'm not even sure it's a bad decision.
Well, now, are corporations people?
I don't think so. I think corporations have certain constitutional rights, and in the Hobby Lobby case, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Does the Supreme Court think that they're people? Are they classified, the corporations, as people by the Supreme Court?
Well, they've said that. They've said that in as many words. And
Mitt Romney said it when he was running for president last year, right? Corporations are people too?
Well, he was quoting from a Supreme Court case, and I think that was one thing that hurt him in the campaign.
But that seems to be the prevailing sentiment amongst the conservative justices on the court, of corporations are people too.
Well, I think let's talk about the Hobby Lobby case a little bit. That involved the Affordable Care Act and whether the Hobby Lobby could not pay for certain benefits that violated their religious beliefs. And, I agree with Hobby Lobby that they should be able to do that. So corporations should have certain rights. It's distinguishable from them spending hundreds of millions of dollars to influence campaigns. I think when you have this is a privately held corporation, they definitely have the right to freedom of religion when you're a privately held corporation. That's my feeling. Now, whether a New York Stock Exchange company has a First Amendment right to its religious beliefs, I'm not sure that's the same because it's a public corporation. But this is a private corporation made up of a closely held, I believe, mostly family members who own the Hobby Lobby, and I think they have certain First Amendment rights. They certainly don't have corporations certainly don't have the right to vote.
What do you think the court should have done with the Citizens United case, and then we'll move on from that case? What should have been the decision?
I think the decision should be yes, Citizens United, which is a nonprofit corporation, by the way. Citizens United had the right to make a movie and the right to promote a movie, and whether it influenced the election or not is irrelevant. It's a First Amendment right to make a movie, period. End of story, and not expand it to cover every corporation contributing to campaigns. They could have limited it to that. That was the issue before the court, and I think they went, they were too much of an activist, and as you said, on this. Just limit the scope of the decision, and it would have been fine.
Yeah, because in fact, what they did was they started to write the opinion one way, and then I think it was Justice Kennedy who came in and wanted to expand it and have a holding in the case that was much broader than any question that was first presented.
Yeah, which I think is just wrong. Just have the Supreme Court decide the cases that are brought before it. That's where they get into a lot of trouble.
We're going to be going to a break in just a little bit. We're with Joel Joseph. He's the author of Black Mondays, the worst Supreme Court decisions. I have a question for you. I was a little shocked. My engineer and I were both a little shocked here a little while ago when you said that the most discriminated group was veterans. And I think that we are here in Hampton Roads, Virginia, of course, a very large military population here. And that was kind of a surprise to us that that was your most discriminated group. How has the Supreme Court treated women over the years and other minorities? Briefly, we have a couple of minutes before our break.
Well, it hasn't treated women very well. In fact, going way back, most people don't know it was the Supreme Court in 1875 that ruled that women did not have the right to vote. And as you recall from the Constitution, doesn't mention men or women or sex or anything like that about only men having the right to vote. So, and these were women in that case, very interesting case, who worked for the rights of African Americans to vote. And I think it's surprising to most Americans that African American males had the right to vote before white women had the right to vote. And the Supreme Court made that decision 9-0. It's one of the only unanimous decisions in the book. And the court said, of course women don't have the right to vote, but didn't base it on really anything in the Constitution. Other minorities have fared not so well. One of the worst decisions, I think, of all time is there's several cases, the Japanese internment cases during World War II. Korematsu was the one that's in the book. And these were American citizens who happened to have a Japanese last name, and they were forced to go, 110,000 or something like that, forced to go to Japanese internment camps around the country. And I visited Manzanar, and it's a horrendous place. We basically arrested these people because of their national origin, not anything that they had done. And, many years later, Congress passed compensation to them, but certainly doesn't make up for being deprived of your liberty for many years.
We're here with Joel Joseph. The show is Justice for All. I'm your host, George Yates. We're on 1650 AM. We're going to go to a short break. We got one more segment to go with Mr. Joseph. We're going to talk about some cases going forward that he thinks are going to be on the horizon for the United States Supreme Court. And go out and get a copy of his book, Black Mondays. You can go get it from Amazon or pick it up at your local bookstore. And this is George Yates, and we'll see you right after the break.
Stay tuned for the next segment of Justice for All with George Yates. Have you been injured in a car accident or other circumstance? Are you in pain, facing a mountain of hospital bills? Is an insurance company trying to get you to settle without an attorney? Call the law firm of George Yates, an experienced personal injury lawyer that can give you the advice you need to make the best decisions. Pick up the phone right now and call 757-491-8800. That's 757-491-8800. Call 757-491-8800 now for a free consultation.
Attention gun enthusiasts, your complete store for guns is at 240 North Battlefield Boulevard in Chesapeake. Tom and the staff will assist you with tactical guns, custom AR builds, and they handle service and repair. Battlefield Guns and Ammo has specials, and they buy, sell, trade, consign, and do FFL transfers, and always look out for the military and the police. Log on to BattlefieldGunshop.com and call 410-7720. Open Monday through Saturday, this is your store for guns, ammo, and accessories. Battlefield Guns and Ammo in Chesapeake.
The place the locals and tourists go for U.S. rare coins and currency is Newcastle Coins and Collectibles in Chesapeake. They specialize in U.S. silver and gold coins, provide free verbal offers, and are always buying U.S. rare coins. Visit them at 681 North Battlefield Boulevard in Chesapeake, across from Chesapeake General, Tuesday through Saturday, and online at newcastlecollectibles.com. Call 609-3633. That's 609-3633 for Newcastle Coins and Collectibles.
Hello, everyone. You're listening to WHKT AM 1650. I'm George Yates, the host of Justice for All, and we're on the phone today here with Joel Joseph, is the author of Black Mondays. We've been here for the last 45 minutes or so. We just have a few more minutes with Mr. Joseph. I'm getting from your the overall theme of your book in terms of the bad decisions, Mr. Joseph, is that basically there's a consistent theme, it seems, where the rights of corporations and private property seem to win out over the rights of individuals, where it's getting more and more difficult for individuals to either sue the government, to sue judges, to sue big companies. And it seems that is the prevailing mood in the court going forward. Am I right on that?
I think you're right on, and I think one thing that all Americans should be concerned with is that we are signing waivers online and usually online that we won't sue this company, that we agree to arbitrate, and the Supreme Court said that these are binding, and it was in the AT&T case, Concepcion versus AT&T, where a family bought a cell phone plan that was advertised as free. And they had agreed with all, when you sign up for a cell phone, you sign about 10 different times, and there's a lot of fine print. And in that, you had agreed not to sue AT&T. And they tried to file a class action, and the Supreme Court said, no, you agreed to it. Now, I think Congress can do some things to override this, because that particular case was based on the Arbitration Act. And I think that we should not be able to arbitrate or have corporations force us to arbitrate and give up our rights to a trial. And, I think we are giving up our rights, and the Supreme Court is leading the charge. They don't seem to like class actions, and they like like the ability of corporations to cut off the rights of citizens to sue and the rights of citizens to have a jury trial.
Well, if you don't have a class action, and as an attorney, and your attorney, and anybody out there listening knows that, if you've been wronged by $30, you can't go hire an attorney to get your $30 back, because the lawyer's going to tell you that it's going to cost you a lot more in attorney's fees. So anybody that's been wronged by a corporation for $10 or even $100 can't really go sue them because they can't afford the attorney. And so class actions are really the only way for corporations to be kept honest. It seems to me that we've got a mood in this country. We've got people that say, well, we don't want the government involved. So if you're going to not have the government regulate these kinds of things, then the only way to really regulate it would be to have attorneys that can sue these companies. And if you take away the right of government to regulate, you take away the right of let's say, to be regulated by suing somebody in court, well, then you've got corporations that can take advantage of people, and there's really no way to remedy that. That's what I see throughout these bad decisions and the problems in the country going forward if we have more laws like this.
I agree with you entirely, and unfortunately, I don't see any hope in Congress to help consumers with class action lawsuits. And I do blame lawyers to some extent for this, and I've been a party to many class action lawsuits and have objected many times that the lawyers seem to make all the money on the class action suits, and the consumers get very little.
Yeah, the problem, and the lawyers are perceived as, which many of them are, and they also seem to drum up these class actions. I mean, some of these are legitimate class action cases, and perhaps some of them are not, and they use these class actions basically as blackmail to these corporations, and that's the big problem, isn't it?
That is the big problem, and it happens all the time. And now the only class actions really that are being brought are concerning the Securities and Exchange violations. So if you have a stock manipulation, there'll be a class action, and those the Supreme Court seems to support, whereas where stockholders have a gripe against insider trading or something like that. But the consumer suits against major corporations like the AT&T cellular case and so forth have been cut way back by the Supreme Court. And I think we need Congress to step in and to clarify the laws so that they can weed out, and I think judges can weed out, but oftentimes don't, can weed out the real class action suits from the blackmail suits that you're talking about.
We only have a few more minutes to talk. I know that you've got some suggestions after 40 years of doing this on judges. I noticed that in all of these years, we've only had 3 judges impeached in the entire history of the United States. I mean, once a judge is appointed, a federal judge anyway, they're there for life. What is your opinion on that, the life appointment for a federal judge, and how would we change that? Could it ever be changed? And if so, what would you recommend?
Well, there's 2 recommendations. I think we should have term limits on judges, and it could be 10 or 15 years for a federal judge, which is plenty of time. We've had judges that have been judges for 40 years. And I've been before federal judges. One, I won't name him, but he was 87 years old, and he didn't remember what he said 5 minutes before. So I think an age limit, and I'd say maybe 75 or 80 years, and you're out. And that would give us a little more turnover on the Supreme Court as well. Of course, we'd need a constitutional amendment to do that, and unfortunately, I don't see that happening. Although it could happen. The citizens could get fed up enough where we could get a national movement on that. But those are 2 recommendations I have for limiting the terms of the Supreme Court and lower federal court judges as well.
We're here on Justice for All. I'm George Yates. I'm going to say hi, Lucy, to my 3-year-old out there. And I'm here with Joel Joseph, who wrote the book Black Mondays. Going forward, do you see any interesting cases that are going to be heard by the Supreme Court going forward? One thing I'm fascinated by, Joel, is net neutrality. That worries me a little bit. That it looks to me like the big corporations are going to band together and squeeze out us little guys. There's what are you going to call it? A two-speed internet. What do you see going forward on that net neutrality?
Well, I'm not sure if there are any cases pending on that issue. I think it could work its way to the Supreme Court. Related issue concerns the right to privacy that the European Judicial Court ruled that citizens have the right to limit what Google says about you and how long it keeps it. I'm not sure that's going to happen in the United States, but also we have the issue coming up concerning another ACLU case against the NSA on privacy and what the government can collect on its citizens and collect on. Of course, I'm not as concerned about the collection on foreign citizens, but I'm very concerned about what the U.S. government collects on its own citizens.
But isn't that European decision on Google, isn't that censorship, and don't we run, isn't that going to cause problems? I mean, I saw that, and I'm not sure I'm in favor of that. I think that the people being able to go wipe out, be able to select what is on Google and what isn't, that's censorship, isn't it?
Yeah, I definitely think it has First Amendment problems. I do think something could be worked out where citizens have a right to submit a comment that would be posted next to some listing on Google. Where you had a dispute about, just say you had a dispute about a bill that's being all over the internet. It's just like your credit report. You do have the right to post your side of the thing, your side of the dispute online. Something's going to happen with that, and possibly there could be a date, an expiration date, sort of a statute of limitations on certain things. With Google, I'm not sure how that's going to work, how that's going to play out.
In our last segment, I want to talk about the surveillance thing. I think that we're all very rightly concerned about that. To what extent are we all agreed that we're going to be spied on by the government, or somehow our private communications are going to be monitored? There is something out there that many people don't even know about, Joel, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, the FISC. What is that, and how is that related to us as citizens right as we're sitting here?
Well, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court is an 11-member court, and all the members of all the judges of that court are appointed by Justice Roberts, the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. And I think that has constitutional problems itself, because Article 3 of the Constitution says federal judges are appointed by the President of the United States with confirmation in the Senate. I believe the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court is unconstitutional ab initio on its own at the beginning.
And it approves every request by the government to spy on citizens, doesn't it?
Well, only 99.9%.
Oh, okay. Well, not everything. Only 99.9%. So basically, without a warrant, without judicial process, these people that are appointed by the Chief Justice, without Senate or congressional confirmation, decide whether or not the government can go and spy and look into our private lives. Is that right? We got about a minute
right,
I got 1 minute for you to respond.
All right. And I know, unfortunately, I know some of these judges, and I wouldn't trust them to deliver a piece of mail for me. I mean, we have to have, if we're going to have any court like that, we've got to have, hear from both sides, and there are proposals before Congress to have an advocate who advocates the rights of citizens. And I also think that they should be appointed by the President, like all Article 3 courts are, with confirmation by the Senate. And, you know, all those judges are already judges in the federal system, and they have full caseloads. So I think we need, if we're going to have a court like that, we need an independent court that doesn't have other business to deal with, that can focus on the right of the government to get information and the right of citizens to privacy.
We've been talking with Joel Joseph. He's the author of Black Mondays. Joel, thank you very much. Everybody out there that's been listening, and